Can you feel it? Toronto doesn't sleep the same way anymore. The city lights shine differently. The hurried footsteps through the streets carry a new rhythm, and the heavy silence of old ghost seems, for the first time in a long time, to be under threat. Something has changed. Something big. And it all started with the puck slowly sliding until it touched Buffalo's empty net at 18 minutes and 8 seconds of the third period. That night, Auston Matthews didn't just score another goal. He sealed a silent pact with the history of the Maple Leafs, wrote his name alongside the Giants, and lit a spark of hope in a fan base that, for decades, has become all too familiar with the bitter taste of disappointment. Goal number 400, a number that separates the great from the legendary. And when that puck crossed the goal line, it wasn't just a scoreboard that changed. It was a narrative of an entire franchise. But to truly understand what this goal means, you have to go back in time. Because the Toronto Maple Leafs are more than a hockey team. They're an institution, a core piece of Canadian DNA. They're the kind of team that, even in their darkest years, can still pack arenas and fuel conversations in bars, family dinners, and office hallways. But that love comes at a price. And it's a heavy one. Almost 6 decades of waiting. 6 decades where every goal, every promising regular season, and every playoff victory was treated as a sign that the suffering might finally be ending. But the happy ending never came. Since 1967, the Stanley Cup has slipped through the blue and white hands of Toronto, like a cruel destiny set on repeating itself. Entire generations have grown up and grown old without seeing the Leafs lift hockey's most coveted trophy. Players have come and gone, carried the hopes of millions, and ultimately failed. Time became an unforgiving enemy. Until, in 2016, a new piece entered the board. Auston Matthews, first overall pick. Cold eyes, a talent that seemed molded for this exact moment in the franchise's history. Since then, he's done what so many before him tried and failed to do. Turn hope into reality. Game after game, he has marked his territory as one of the greatest in the league. With a goal-scoring instinct that intimidates, a calmness that impresses, and a consistency that simply can't be ignored. Reaching 400 goals wasn't by chance. It wasn't luck. It was the result of years of hard work, of a career that keeps stacking historic numbers. Matthews became the 110th player in NHL history to hit that milestone. But among all of them, he's the fastest to reach it since first stepping onto the ice back in October 2016. And perhaps the most impressive stat of all is his goal per game rate, 0.64, the highest among all active players. The kind of statistic that doesn't just place an athlete among the elite, it pushes him into the rare group of those who redefine a franchise's history. At the post-game press conference, his answer was almost minimalistic. It's a team sport. This is a result of everyone's work. A simple sentence, but one loaded with subtext that only a few can truly grasp. Matthews understands what's at stake. He knows his goals are the fuel for a machine that has spent years trying to reach the top, only to fail on the final stretch. And this time, the plan seems different. And if you're watching this video right now, it's because you've already noticed something is happening in Toronto. Around here, we're a community that lives for every behind-the-scenes detail, every rumor, and every twist before it hits the headlines. So don't waste time. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us in the comments, has the time finally come for the Leafs? While Matthews' goals fill the stat sheets, behind the scenes at Scotiabank Arena, the atmosphere is reaching a boiling point. Beyond the camera flashes, a strategic movement is being built, piece by piece. Sources close to the Leafs' decision-making core are hinting at a different vibe in the hallways. This isn't just another good season. This isn't just another year with impressive numbers. There's conviction. There's a plan. There's hunger. The locker room feels it. The front office acts on it. And the fans, for the first time in years, are starting to wonder if, at last, the tide has turned. Because alongside Matthews, other pieces are starting to fall into place. And the team's leaders seem to have learned from past traumas. A strong regular season is not enough. Individual records are not enough. The goal is singular, Stanley Cup or failure. But the story doesn't end with goal number 400. Because while Toronto was busy celebrating Matthews, a second piece of news started circulating quietly whisper between journalists and insiders, the Leafs aren't satisfied. The front office, led by Shanahan and Treliving, fully aware that the championship window won't stay open forever, is reportedly already crafting an audacious plan to further strengthen the roster before the decisive moment arrives. What began as mere speculation quickly gained strength behind closed doors. The search isn't for just any addition. It's for players capable of sharing the responsibility, with Matthews in the playoffs. Experienced surgical pieces, used to the pressure of big decisions. Players capable of shifting the momentum of a series in a single shift. This move says a lot about the franchise's current mindset. For years, Toronto was accused of relying too heavily on individual talent without building the kind of deep, resilient roster needed for playoff battles. Now, the Leafs seem determined to correct that historic flaw while there's still time. If it's up to the front office, the cycle of frustration will end not with luck, but with strategy. So what does all of this mean? It means that Matthews' historic milestone isn't a final chapter. It's the opening paragraph of a new one. A chapter where every move on the board is made with precision, where every stat earned during the regular season is part of a larger plan, where the reinforcements being pursued aren't gambles, but certainties. If everything clicks, Toronto won't just break the Stanley Cup curse. They'll elevate Matthews to the most important name in the franchise's history. And if it fails, this will be remembered as a year when everything seemed perfect, but fate once again had the last laugh. But what do you think? Is this the start of a historic era, or just another chapter in the endless cycle of hope and heartbreak that has haunted the Leafs since 1967? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, at any moment, the move that could change the team's fate might already be on its way. And when that happens, you'll want to know before anyone else. So leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because the next twist in this story is closer than you think. See you on the ice. Have you ever stopped to imagine how a single phone call can change the course of an entire franchise? How the fate of a passionate city, steeped in history and starving for glory, can be sealed or shattered in a matter of minutes? That's exactly what almost happened in 2001, when the hockey world came close to witnessing one of the most shocking trades in NHL history. One of those moments whose true weight only those who live and breathe this sport can fully understand. Vincent Lecavalier, young, talented, the face of a franchise still searching for its identity, was on his way to Toronto. The deal felt inevitable. Behind the scenes, the tension was boiling. Agents were ironing out the final details. Front offices were deep in conversations, and the clock was ticking toward the trade deadline. Back then, Lecavalier was seen as a future champion, a rare piece, one of those players who define entire generations. And when the phone rang, the message couldn't have been clearer. It's done. You're going to Toronto. The words sounded like the final sentence in a story that, up until that moment, seemed already written. The package, of course, was steep. Toronto was preparing to part ways with solid names like Nick Antropov, Jonas Höglander, and Tomas Kaberle. But no one seemed to hesitate. It was Lecavalier. It was a golden opportunity to finally bring to the city the franchise player it so desperately lacked. On the other end of the line, Lecavalier himself got the news while napping before a game. The deal had been sealed. For weeks, the talks had been silent, discreet, far from the spotlight, until in that moment it all seemed to fall into place. A change of scenery, a new jersey, an entire future waiting to be rewritten in Toronto. But it only took 30 minutes for the script to take a brutal twist. Another call, and the voice on the other end wasn't one of celebration, but of frustration. It's off. It's not happening. Lightning President Ron Campbell, who until then had no full knowledge of the negotiation, was blindsided and made a decision that would change everything. General Manager Rick Dudley was fired, and the deal, which for a fleeting second had felt like reality, turned into yet another one of those stories that fade into the past, only to resurface as ghosts of what might have been. Lecavalier stayed. Toronto moved on, without the piece that might have altered the franchise's destiny. But behind that decision, there was more than just cold numbers or business strategy. There were conflicts. There was wear and tear. Lecavalier and head coach John Tortorella shared a relationship that seemed impossible to sustain. The locker room was divided. The Lightning were still a team under construction, searching for an identity, while the Leafs were desperately chasing a name to reignite hope for a city that, since 1967, had lived an eternal wait for the Stanley Cup. The curious part is that, contrary to what many believed, Lecavalier and Tortorella eventually found common ground. The respect, once non-existent, grew enough for them to lead Tampa Bay to the title in 2004, a championship that would never have happened had that trade to Toronto gone through, a trade that, ironically, might have finally delivered the Leafs the trophy that always seems to slip through their fingers. Hockey is full of these ironies. What once seemed like the end of a relationship became the start of a legacy. And on the other hand, what looked like Toronto's perfect opportunity vanished in a phone call, turning into yet another chapter in a long saga of near misses and wasted chances that have come to define the franchise. Time moved on. Lecavalier retired, earned his place, raised the cup, and even today, in 2025, continues to cash in on his multi-million-dollar buyout from the Lightning, while his name remains a symbol of the great what-if that still haunts Toronto's front office. But fate loves to toy with cycles. And as a memory of that episode comes back into focus, another name has risen to try, once and for all, to break the curse haunting the Leafs. Auston Matthews, the face of modern hope, the symbol of a new generation that refuses to accept the idea that the past defines the future. At just 27 years old, Matthews has already written enough chapters to cement his place in history. But last week, he achieved something only a handful ever have. With a goal against the Buffalo Sabres, he reached the 400-goal milestone in his career. 400, a number only 110 players in the entire history of the NHL can claim to have reached. And Matthews didn't just get there. He did it in record time, proving game after game why he carries the weight of Toronto's future on his shoulders. Since his debut in October 2016, no one has scored more goals than him. No other player has been as lethal, as consistent, as important. Matthews isn't just a great player. He's the kind of athlete who reshapes franchises, defines eras, and fills arenas even on the coldest Toronto nights. The way he reacted to news of his own achievement was, at the very least, revealing, humble, calm, saying it's a team sport, that every goal is a result of the group's effort. But the stats tell a different story. A story that makes it clear that if Toronto is closer than ever to breaking the drought, it's because of Matthews. And as the city dreams of the cup, the past keeps whispering to those who closely follow the Leafs' journey. Because if Lecavalier had come, maybe the story would have played out differently. Maybe the wait would have ended 2 decades ago. But maybe fate was saving the hero's role for someone like Matthews. Now, with the playoff approaching and the season heating up, Toronto's front office is once again buzzing. The general manager, the scouts, the analysts all know that a player like Matthews needs the right pieces around him. No one wins a Stanley Cup alone, not even the greatest legends in NHL history. And behind closed doors, negotiations, plans, and conversations are happening. The market never sleeps. Management knows every decision made now could be the difference between a title or yet another offseason filled with frustration. The city is breathing expectation. Fans pack bars, streets, and discussion groups. Every Matthews goal is celebrated as if it's the prelude to something bigger, something the city has long waited for. But at the same time, deep in the mind of every supporter, there's that silent question. Is this really the year? Time is the cruelest judge in sports. It makes you pay dearly for missed chances and rarely offers second ones. Lecavalier was one of them. Matthews is another. And the Leafs story seems to run in circles, waiting for the moment the page will finally turn. The real question is that moment finally arriving? Or will Toronto once again watch its hero get close, hit the post, and become just another legend in a team that collects almosts? Now I want to hear from you. Will Auston Matthews be the name that breaks the cycle? Will this generation succeed where so many others failed? Or are we just watching another great player trapped in a familiar script whose ending was written long ago? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And get ready, Because just like in 2001, history always loves to surprise you when you least expect it.